Pressure is a World War II drama directed by Anthony Maras, inspired by the events leading up to D-Day, and adapted from David Haig's 2014 play of the same name. Built around the 72 hours before one of the most important military operations in history, the film follows General Dwight D. Eisenhower as he wrestles with the decisions of whether or not to launch the D-Day invasion. At first glance, Pressure can easily be dismissed as a movie about weather forecasting. After all, much of the film revolves around meteorologists debating weather patterns and predicting storm conditions. However, that description does a disservice to what the film is actually trying to accomplish. At its core, Pressure is a story about leadership, responsibility, and the burden of making decisions when certainty simply doesn't exist, especially as Mother Nature is concerned. Central to Eisenhower's decisions are two meteorologists, James Stagg and Irving Crick. Both men are tasked with forecasting the weather conditions that could determine the success or failure of the invasion. While they are working with much of the same information, their methods of interpreting that information lead them to vastly different conclusions. This disagreement would become the driving force of the film, and what makes the conflict compelling is that neither man is portrayed as incompetent. Both are intelligent, confident, but most importantly, each is convinced they are the ones that are correct. The tension doesn't just come from determining who is right, but from watching Eisenhower attempt to navigate two competing expert opinions while understanding that thousands of lives hang in the balance. Brendan Fraser delivers a commanding performance as General Dwight D. Eisenhower. The film presents him as a leader carrying the weight of previous failures, particularly Exercise Tiger, a real-life training exercise intended to prepare Allied forces for D-Day that unfortunately resulted in hundreds of deaths. Whether standing in front of military leaders or quietly reflecting on the consequences of his decisions, Fraser captures a man who understands that history may judge him based on what happens over the next few days, despite all he's done thus far. While Eisenhower may be the most recognizable figure in the story, I found James Stagg to be the film's true standout. The movie portrays Stagg as an exceptionally intelligent yet deeply burdened individual. He understands that his forecast could influence one of the most significant military operations ever undertaken, and the pressure of that responsibility hangs over nearly every scene he's in. The performances throughout the film do much of the heavy lifting. Because Pressure is largely confined to meetings, discussions, and debates, the actors must carry the tension through dialogue rather than action. Fortunately, the cast is more than capable of doing so. The exchanges between Stagg and Crick are particularly engaging as both men passionately defend their conclusions. And like I mentioned before, much of the film's drama stems from the growing rivalry between Stagg and Crick as their disagreements become increasingly heated toward Eisenhower's final decision. But let me be clear, I'm not a historian, so I can't speak with authority on how accurately every event is portrayed in this movie. There are moments that certainly feel heightened for dramatic effect, including certain events that appear designed to increase tension within the narrative. One specifically that I can recall involving a hospital. However, the film never feels disrespectful to the history it is depicting. Instead, it succeeds in capturing the immense uncertainty that surrounded the days leading up to D-Day. What surprised me most about Pressure is how effectively it creates suspense despite the audience already knowing the outcome. We know D-Day happened. We know the decision that was ultimately made, yet the film manages to generate genuine tension because it places us in the shoes of the people who didn't know what would happen next, and the uncertainty is where the film truly shines. More than a war film, Pressure is a film about decision-making under impossible circumstances. It explores the reality that leaders often have to act without perfect information, and that sometimes the difference between success and catastrophe comes down to trusting the right person at the right moment. By the time the credits rolled, I found myself appreciating not only the historical significance of the events, but also the individuals whose contributions are often overshadowed by larger figures in history. While Eisenhower remains the face of the decision, Pressure reminds us that history is often shaped by people working behind the scenes, and more often than not, advising those who end up calling the shots. Overall, Pressure is an engaging historical drama elevated by strong performances, compelling character dynamics, and an often overlooked aspect of the D-Day story. It may be a movie about weather on paper, but in execution, it's a thoughtful examination of leadership, responsibility, and the human costs of uncertainty. As always, thanks for watching. Let me know what you liked or disliked about Pressure in the comments below, and let me know what other films you'd like me to talk about next. Until next time, this has been Film Sense with Brian. I'll catch you around on the next video.